Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Spencer Martin starting in goal. No surprise here for the Canucks tonight against the St. Louis Blues. All of our guests today, including Iain MacIntyre from Sportsnet.ca, standing by. Sponsored by Passant Motors. Get a gift with every financed vehicle this holiday season, like 6 months of gas, no payments until the summer, or a gift card up to $1,000. Get all the info. BASANT Motors.com. Canucks hosting St. Louis tonight after losing another home game 5-1 Saturday to Winnipeg. We talked about it earlier. Their fourth 5-1 loss at home this season. Strange and disappointing for Canuck Nation. Iain MacIntyre joining us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you boys?
Very, very well. I love the Christmas tree in the background. Thanks for that. Festive touch.
Yeah.
Just 5 home wins for the Canucks so far this season. Iain, we all know what went on Saturday night, the Saturday before that against the Minnesota. How do you explain that?
I can't, and neither can they. A while ago, JT Miller used the term immaturity, that the team was immature. I think I know what he meant. I think it's got a bit to do with complacency. I think it's got a bit to do with inexperience, at least inexperience as far as knowing how to win, not inexperience in the league or playing the game. We've just seen a team to this point, and we're 30 games in, we've seen a team that just cannot sustain any momentum. If they have 2 or 3 good games, you better brace yourself because a market correction is coming. Now, the question is, why can't they sustain it? There's probably a lot of reasons that go into that. But the fact that, as you point out, they've already lost 4 of these home games by 5-1. They haven't learned from the earlier mistakes. You think after 1 or 2 of those 5-1 games, you might think, okay, that's enough. Let's be different the next time we come home after a big win, which is what they did that win in Calgary. If they could bottle the last 40 minutes of that in terms of how to play at both ends of the ice, that's as good as they look defensively all year, those last 40 minutes. And then they come home against Winnipeg and they can't get a shot on net. They're not winning their battles. I think that one interesting thing, and I was on deadline that night, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to spend with players. Yeah. But Ethan Bear told me that they need to maybe just stop having so much fun and get to work. And I think what he meant was it's a fairly tight-knit group of guys who, for the most part, have played together for a couple or 3 years or longer. They like each other. They're upbeat. They've got an upbeat coach who stresses, all the positives. And maybe it's just it's too happy. It's too positive for where the team is, and they just need to work a little bit more and get a little more serious about their work.
Yeah, what does it say and great article, by the way, and advise people to check it out, sportsnet.ca. What does it say when someone like Ethan Bear, and say what you want about the way things went for him in Carolina, when he says something like that, coming from a winning organization like that?
Well, that's right. And it wasn't happy for him personally in Carolina, but he was with a team that won an awful lot of games. And, it's not that different than what, say, Curtis Lazar said, coming from the Boston Bruins, what Luke Schenn has tried to preach numerous times, a guy who won 2 Stanley Cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And again, people will, for some reason, they'll try to disparage, Luke Schenn's role as he was an extra guy, which he was, but he was still a regular part of a team that won 2 Stanley Cups. He knows what he's talking about. I think what it illustrates, when we talk about culture, and certainly Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin have been talking about culture since they came to the Canucks a year ago, it's not as simple as you bring in 2 or 3 guys who have won, and then, their aura is absorbed by those around them who have never won and they figure it out. There's a lot more that goes into it than that. And I just think it's frustrating and perplexing, and you guys would agree, it's frustrating and perplexing that 30 games in, they're not showing more progress in that regards in figuring it out.
Ian, who is on your untouchable list when it comes to Canucks players?
Well, it's more than Elias Pettersson. I'll say that. I would say Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko.
Yeah.
Those three. I mean, if you think about it, you've got a top 10 two-way center in the league in Pettersson. You've got a top 10 defenseman, and maybe if he's not quite on, he's top 15. But Quinn Hughes is the best defenseman this organization has ever had, and is one of the best passers of the puck in the world, one of the best power play quarterbacks in the world. And then you have Thatcher Demko, who, in my mind, is a top 10 goalie. It's astonishing how badly he started this season, but he still has 3 more years on a very reasonable contract after this. So I start with those 3 guys. And I had a discussion with the morning guys on radio today about the question of a total rebuild. Well, if you're rebuilding, are those not 3 guys that you'd be looking for, like in some other form? And the fact that they're all still young and young enough to build around, I'm not trading those guys anywhere. I think this organization has failed, and it failed, under Benning post Edmonton bubble. And it has failed so far under Rutherford and Alvin. It's failed to build around these really good core pieces that they have. But that said, I'm not giving away those core pieces.
Yeah. Regardless of what happens on the ice, Ian, off the ice is going to be very interesting leading up to the trade deadline. Bo Horvat, which, I mean, everybody thinks it looks right now, Ian, like they're going to move him. Got to make a decision on Luke Schenn. They love him. Kuzmenko is a wild card. I mean, how do you re-sign him? Where do you find the money? So off the ice, it's going to be very interesting coming up in the next few weeks as well.
Yeah, you could probably throw Ethan Bear into that conversation as well. That's right. As a guy who would have rental value.
Yep.
Yeah, there is going to be a lot. It's daunting, though, when you think about this, Rick, that there's only been a half dozen trades since the season started. And,
That's right.
And of those, who's the biggest name who's moved? Well, it's probably Ethan Bear.
Yep.
So it tells you how difficult it is to try to make a hockey trade, even just a hockey trade where you're talking about really big assets. We just don't see it. We saw it a little bit in the summer, but this is the Canucks reality, and especially with Horvat, with those other pieces. I'd be really wary of trading Luke Schenn for what we just talked about, in terms of culture and trying to build a team that knows how to win. Ethan Bear looks like he fits, and if you can re-sign him at a fairly modest number, why not? Because you do need some people who can play defense. But and Kuzmenko, it's kind of going to be up to him, I think, where he wants to play. Hopefully he'll want to stay. But Bo Horvat, there's no way around this. They've kind of painted themselves into the corner with this.
That's right.
I use that phrase because they prioritized JT Miller last summer. And at the time, honestly, I couldn't really blame them for doing it. I don't think probably a lot of people blamed them for doing it. JT Miller is a higher scoring, more impactful player. He was the guy that on the surface would be more inclined to go to the UFA market. Bo Horvat was a career Canuck that, everybody thinks, and I think, still would like to play here. Mm-hmm. But when they did the Miller deal, it just restricted in a lot of ways what they could do with Horvat. And as you've pointed out, Rick, they're not close, and they weren't close when the season started. And I think they figured, well, we've got time. It's a long way to the trade deadline in March. When you're thinking about this in September, but the season that Bo Horvat has had, that gulf has gotten bigger. Even if the Canucks have come up a little bit, which I think they have, Bo Horvat's inflation rate this season, based on scoring like a 60-goal scorer, has probably outpaced whatever the inflation was in the Canucks offer. So I think they're probably even farther apart now than when the season began, and it's 100%. Just really hard to see how there's going to be a resolution in this. But I will say, last week when you broke the story, Rick, I reached out to somebody in Horvat's camp, and they told me by text they're not giving up hope. Like, they haven't completely slammed the door on this, but it's hard to see, given what we think the disparity is between the two sides right now. It's hard to see how they're going to find common ground. But it is possible.
Yeah, you made the point on Saturday, and it was a great one, that they lose the game, and somehow Horvat's value went up because he got his 22nd goal. Iain, we've been discussing this in the morning. How important are pregame skates, morning skates, for a struggling hockey team?
And why aren't you there today? I'm going to question your pride, your commitment.
Well, I'm committed to you guys.
Oh, yeah, right.
Priorities straight. You want me to be just on the phone? You running B-roll of meetings and popcorn in the press box or something? How important are the morning skates? Not very. I would say.
Thank you.
I think they used to be a little more important. I think and especially coaches would say all the time, you get a read off the players from the morning skate. Like, what's their energy level like? You know, what's their focus like? Are they bought in? And now, especially with this team, the most predictable thing about them is their unpredictability. And Boudreau has said at times, after terrible games like Saturday, that all indications were guys were tuned in and ready to go. And then, on Saturday they're outshot 10-1 at the start. So not very. They're more important if you haven't had practice time. I think then you cover some of what you've missed in practice in the morning skate. But this team has had time between games. They've had full practices. They had one yesterday. They had one on Friday at UBC. I don't think they're that important. I don't mind guys taking the optional if it feels like they're going to have more energy for the game.
Yeah, at least to their concerns. Iain, Merry Christmas. Best of the season to you. Thanks so much for doing this.
Well, Merry Christmas to you guys. Nice to be on with you. Nice set decoration. I'm told that was all Dollywall.
It was, yeah. It was.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I'll give him credit for that. Iain MacIntyre joining us from Sportsnet, sportsnet.ca.